The night air in Elias Vance's workshop was thick with the hum of old machinery and the scent of ozone. It was a comfortable, familiar place, a haven of circuits, wires, and forgotten radios. For a man who had dedicated his life to listening for whispers from the cosmos, the silence of the Arizona desert had always been a symphony. But on this particular night, the symphony was interrupted by a jarring, impossible note. Elias sat hunched over his main receiver, a Frankenstein's monster of copper coils and vacuum tubes he'd built himself. He wore a pair of thick, cracked glasses that magnified the exhaustion etched around his eyes. He'd been chasing this phantom signal for weeks. It wasn't a comet's chatter or a distant pulsar's rhythmic beat. This was different. This was calculated. The signal was a series of pulses, a cosmic heartbeat that followed a sequence too precise to be random. At first, Elias dismissed it as radio interference, but the patterns were too complex, too mathematical. It was a cipher waiting to be solved. He tried every known astronomical algorithm, every code-breaking technique in his repertoire. Nothing worked. The signal remained a wall of nonsensical noise. That's when Maya walked in.
Maya, a prodigy in the art of digital decryption, was the complete opposite of her father. While Elias was a man of analog auras and historical tech, Maya was a creature of the digital age, her fingers flying across a laptop keyboard with a speed that defied logic. She saw the world not in tangible connections, but in lines of code. "Still chasing ghosts, Dad?" she asked, her voice a calm counterpoint to the frenetic energy in the room. Elias sighed, running a hand over his tired face. "It's not a ghost, Maya. It's a message. I just can't translate it." Maya leaned over his shoulder, her eyes scanning the oscilloscope. The green waves danced across the screen, a language of their own. "Let me see the raw data," she said, her voice dropping into a focused, low tone. He passed her a flash drive, his own work carefully saved. Maya plugged it into her laptop, and for the next hour, the only sounds were the clicking of her keys and the gentle hum of the vintage receiver. Elias watched her, a mix of pride and fear swirling in his gut. Her mind was a thing of terrifying beauty, and he worried about the things it might uncover. Suddenly, Maya stopped. Her fingers froze, and her eyes widened. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "This isn't a star chart. It's a set of coordinates." Elias felt a cold dread creep up his spine. Coordinates for what?
Maya's expression was a mixture of disbelief and terror. She pointed at the screen, where a series of numbers, decrypted, formed a location on Earth. "It's a desert in Nevada, a place the government calls the Area 51. A heavy silence fell over the workshop. The hum of the receiver suddenly felt menacing, the scent of ozone toxic. Elias and Maya exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between them. They had stumbled onto something monumental, something that went far beyond radio astronomy. This wasn't a signal from a distant star. It was a ghost from a past we were never meant to remember. A secret hidden in plain sight. The next day, as Elias and Maya began preparing for their journey, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. A dark sedan with tinted windows parked across the street, its occupants hidden from view. Phone calls were punctuated by strange clicks and static. The world, which had once felt so vast and open, now felt small and claustrophobic. They were no longer just listeners, they were targets. The signal hadn't just reached them, It had found them, and it had brought with it a shadow they couldn't escape. The hunt was on, and they were the prey. But what they didn't know was that they weren't just being pursued by the government. Something far older, far more alien, had also heard the signal, and it was watching them too. It was waiting for them to arrive at the coordinates, and it was getting closer.
The air in Nevada was a dry, choking heat, a stark contrast to the familiar chill of Elias's Arizona workshop. The vast, empty landscape seemed to swallow sound, leaving only the relentless hum of the rental car's engine and the tense silence between father and daughter. They had driven for 2 days, a blur of cheap motel coffee and whispered conversations under the cloak of night. Each turn of the wheel felt like a step deeper into a conspiracy, a journey into the heart of a secret that had been kept for a generation. The coordinates led them to a stretch of desolate highway that seemed to disappear into nothing. The GPS on Maya's phone, a symbol of their modern world, flashed an eerie message: location not found. They were no longer on any known map. Ahead, in the shimmering heat haze, a fence appeared. It was a formidable barrier of barbed wire, punctuated by signs with stark warnings: restricted military zone, lethal force authorized. The fence stretched for miles in both directions, a scar on the barren earth. "This is it," Elias whispered, his voice hoarse. "The end of the line."
Maya, her face pale but determined, pointed to a small, nearly invisible gap in the fence, a spot where a section of wire had been expertly clipped. "Someone wants us to get in," she said, her voice trembling slightly. That realization was a new layer of dread. They weren't just breaking in, they were being invited. They slipped through the gap, the dry bushes scratching at their clothes. The silence was absolute. No birds sang, no insects buzzed. The only sound was the thudding of their own hearts. As they crept closer, the Area 51 materialized from the desert floor. It wasn't a futuristic base of gleaming steel, but a sprawling complex of hangars and bunkers that looked aged, almost forgotten. They found a maintenance tunnel entrance, cleverly disguised as a ventilation shaft, its door ajar. The scent of stale air and something else, something metallic and sharp, like old blood and cold iron, assailed them. Inside, the base was a labyrinth of concrete corridors. They moved like ghosts, their footsteps muffled by a strange, thick silence that seemed to absorb all sound. They found a server room, its hum a deafening roar after the quiet of the tunnels. Maya, with practiced speed, interfaced her laptop with the network. A flood of classified data appeared on her screen.
"It's all here," she breathed, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and horror. "The Roswell incident. They didn't just find a crashed weather balloon, they found a ship." Elias's hands were shaking as he read a report over her shoulder. The report, marked Top Secret, detailed the recovery of a non-terrestrial craft and the discovery of a non-human entity. The language was cold, clinical, and terrifying. It referred to the being as Specimen 13 and described its physiology in chilling detail. A tall, slender creature with enormous obsidian black eyes and skin like weathered parchment. But then, Maya clicked on another file, one with a timestamp from the early 1950s. Its title was simple and ominous: The Exchange Protocol. This wasn't a record of containment. It was a record of a pact. The government hadn't just hidden the existence of the alien, they had made a deal with it. A wave of nausea hit Elias. He felt the floor sway beneath his feet. The hum of the server room now sounded like a sinister laugh. This was no simple cover-up. This was a partnership, a dark alliance forged in the desert heat. They had come here seeking a secret, but they had found something far worse, a betrayal of the entire human race.
The screen in the server room glowed with a chilling, artificial light, casting long shadows that danced like phantoms on the concrete walls. Maya, her face illuminated by the cold display, scrolled through the Exchange Protocol file. The document was a bureaucratic nightmare, full of redacted lines and coded language, but the grim truth was impossible to hide. The government had not simply contained Specimen 13, they had established a communication channel with it, a treaty negotiated in fear and desperation. Elias watched over her shoulder, his heart pounding a desperate rhythm against his ribs. The details in the file were fragmented, but they painted a horrifying picture. The alien, referred to as the Herald, was a scout, a messenger from a species far beyond human comprehension. Its purpose wasn't invasion in the traditional sense, but something far more insidious, a slow, quiet infiltration. The pact was a terrible bargain, advanced alien technology in exchange for something far more precious, biological samples, specifically human DNA for research. A new file marked Audiovisual Log 1957 caught Maya's attention. She clicked on it, and the screen went black before flickering to life with grainy, silent footage. Elias leaned in closer, his breath catching in his throat.
The video showed a sterile, dimly lit chamber. In the center stood a figure, tall and gaunt, its silhouette unnaturally thin. It was the creature from the Roswell report, its skin a sickly pale color, its limbs long and spidery. But it was the eyes that truly held his attention, two vast, bottomless pools of black, reflecting no light, no emotion, nothing at all. They were the eyes of a predator, cold and ancient. Seated across from the creature was a group of grim-faced military officials, their uniforms crisp and their expressions a mixture of awe and terror. One of them, a general with a hard jaw and an equally hard stare, spoke into a microphone. The creature's head tilted slightly, its silence more terrifying than any roar could have been. A robotic, synthesized voice, tinny and devoid of all humanity, translated its response. The audio file began to play. The voice was metallic, yet it carried an undertone that scraped against the edges of the mind. Your species is insignificant, a momentary flicker of life on a forgotten rock. The general's face remained a mask of stone, but Elias could see the fear in his eyes. The translated voice continued, its words hitting Elias like a physical blow. We have no need for conquest. We have already won. Your planet, your lives, they are simply another experiment, and the results are nearing completion.
Elias gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white. The cold indifference of the words was a chilling revelation. They weren't a threat of war, they were a death sentence delivered with the apathy of a scientist observing a petri dish. The pact wasn't about peace, it was about cooperation in humanity's own slow, meticulous dissection. Suddenly, a loud metallic clang echoed from the corridor outside the server room. The video feed cut out, replaced by a warning message on Maya's laptop. Unauthorized access detected. Security Protocol 5 engaged. "They know we're here," Maya whispered, her voice cracking with fear. She slammed her laptop shut, its screen going dark. The humming of the server room suddenly felt like an alarm bell.
The silence that followed was suffocating. A heavy sense of being watched settled over them, a presence far more ancient and terrifying than any military patrol. They had seen the truth, and now they were a loose end, a problem to be solved. They had to get out, and they had to get out now. The ghost signal hadn't been a discovery, it had been an invitation to witness their own doom.
The silence in the concrete corridor was shattered by a low, rhythmic thumping that grew closer with every passing second. It was the sound of heavy military boots on solid ground. Elias and Maya exchanged a look of pure terror, their eyes wide with the shared understanding that their luck had just run out. The ghost signal, the hidden base, the chilling video, it had all led to this. They were no longer investigators, they were fugitives. "The exit," Elias said, his voice a strained whisper. He pointed down the corridor towards a faint glow of light. They moved, not running, but a frantic, low shuffle, their bodies pressed against the cold wall. Every nerve in their bodies was screaming, but they knew a single sound could be their end. As they neared the exit, a deep, inhuman hum echoed from behind them, a sound that resonated not just in their ears, but in their bones. They risked a quick glance back. A team of soldiers was in pursuit, their rifles held at the ready. But it wasn't the soldiers that made their blood run cold. It was the figure walking among them. Tall and slender, its skin a sickly gray, the creature known as the Herald moved with a fluid, unnatural grace. Its vast black eyes seemed to absorb the dim light, and as it turned its head slightly in their direction, Elias felt a wave of icy dread wash over him. It wasn't just a physical presence, it was a psychological one, a force of pure malevolence.
They burst out of the base, the harsh desert sun a blinding shock after the dim corridors. The rental car was still where they left it. They scrambled inside, the engine roaring to life with a desperate growl. Elias slammed the accelerator to the floor, sending a cloud of dust billowing behind them. A military jeep sped into view, its tires kicking up sand as it gave chase. A helicopter, a dark wasp in the sky, rose from a nearby hangar, its blades beating the air with a deafening thrum. They were surrounded, hunted from the ground and from the air. The desert, which had once felt so vast, was now a trap. Maya, gripping the dashboard, turned to her father. "They knew we were coming. The signal wasn't just a message, it was bait. They wanted us to see it. Why?" Elias swerved the car violently, narrowly avoiding a boulder. "I don't know, but the message we intercepted, it wasn't meant for us. It was meant for everyone. We just got it first." He drove with reckless abandon, navigating the treacherous desert terrain. He had spent his life studying the cosmos, but now he was fighting for his life in the desolate landscape. The jeep behind them was gaining ground, its occupants yelling over a loudspeaker, but their words were lost in the wind.
The helicopter descended, its powerful spotlight cutting through the midday haze, a blinding eye searching for its prey. Elias swerved again, taking a sharp turn into a narrow canyon, the walls of rock offering a brief, terrifying shield. The jeep, unable to make the turn, crashed against the canyon wall, its engine sputtering into silence. The helicopter, however, was a different story. It hovered above the canyon, its spotlight fixed on their car. They were cornered. Elias slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt. Maya looked at him, her face a mask of resignation. This was it. But then, the helicopter abruptly veered off, its spotlight flickering and dying. An electrical burst, a shockwave of energy, rippled through the canyon. And the helicopter, now just a dying bird, plunged to the ground in a ball of flame. Elias and Maya stared, dumbfounded. The dust settled, and a new, terrible silence descended.
It wasn't the silence of the desert. It was the silence of something watching, something ancient and powerful. They weren't saved. They were spared. The creature, the herald, had a different plan for them, a plan far more sinister than a simple bullet or crash. They had seen the truth, and now they were its messengers. The hunt was over, but the terror had just begun.
The drive back was a waking nightmare. They weren't just fleeing, they were carrying the weight of a secret that could shatter the world. The helicopter crash hadn't been an accident, it had been a demonstration, a chilling message delivered not with words, but with cold, calculated power. The creature, the herald, had spared them for a reason. They were its unwitting pawns, the final piece in a game that had been playing out for decades. Back in the safety of Elias's workshop, the familiar scent of ozone and old electronics no longer felt comforting. It felt like a tomb. They had the raw data from the server, the chilling video, the files detailing the exchange protocol, all the proof they needed. Maya, her hands trembling, uploaded everything to the dark corners of the internet, creating encrypted links that would be almost impossible for the government to scrub completely. But the silence that followed the uploads was the most terrifying part. There was no immediate panic, no sudden news reports. The government issued a quick, dismissive statement about unsubstantiated conspiracy theories, and the story was quickly buried under the endless noise of social media and the daily news cycle. Elias and Maya had expected a storm, a reckoning. What they got was a deafening quiet. Days bled into weeks. They lived in isolation, their windows blacked out, their phones turned off. Every shadow was a potential threat, every creak of the floorboards a harbinger of doom. They were no longer Elias and Maya, a father and daughter. They were two people living with a terrifying truth, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
One evening, while Elias was meticulously cleaning his old receiver, the machine, now a symbol of both his greatest triumph and his greatest fear, suddenly hissed with static. He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. A faint, rhythmic pulse began to emerge from the noise, a sound he knew all too well. It was a new signal, different from the first, but unmistakably alien. He stared at the oscilloscope, his breath catching in his throat as a new, impossibly complex pattern began to form. It wasn't a set of coordinates this time. It was a message, and this time there was no need for decryption. It was a simple, stark phrase that appeared on the screen, translated into every human language. "The experiment is complete. We are coming home." Elias and Maya looked at each other, their faces pale with a shared profound horror. The truth wasn't just out there, it was already here. The aliens weren't coming. They had been here all along, walking among us, studying us, and living in the shadows. The herald wasn't a messenger. It was a gardener, tending to its human crop. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place with a sickening thud. The signal Elias had intercepted wasn't a distress call or a warning. It was a final cosmic announcement. The experiment was over. The game had ended. The government hadn't been fighting the aliens. They had been protecting them, collaborating with them. A silent partnership for 70 years while the world went on oblivious. Elias walked to the window and cautiously pulled back the edge of the blackout curtain. The street was quiet. bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. A man was walking his dog, his silhouette a mundane, everyday sight. But as the man turned, the streetlight caught his face, and Elias froze. The man's eyes, even from a distance, seemed to be two vast, bottomless pools of black. He quickly dropped the curtain, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. The aliens were not coming. They were already here, living among us, their eyes watching us from the shadows, their presence a silent, terrifying secret. And for all we know, they're still out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the final eerie silence that will announce their arrival to a world too blind to see them. The question isn't whether we'll find them, but whether they'll let us know they've been here all along.
If you were gripped by this tale of cosmic secrets and government conspiracies, don't let the story end here. Subscribe to our channel to make sure you never miss the next chapter of terror. Watch another video we prepared especially for you and delve deeper into the mysteries of the unknown. And remember, the greatest fear is the one that's hiding in plain sight.